Ever notice how much is going on in your head during a normal conversation? Like while someone's talking about their weekend, you're doing like 5 things at once. You're analyzing their tone, wondering if you're maintaining the right amount eye contact, noticing they seem slightly off today, calculating the perfect moment to respond, and judging yourself for overthinking all of this. Meanwhile, everyone else just seems to talk naturally, easily, without all the noise, That exhaustion you feel after socializing? Well, it's not because you're antisocial, it's because your brain won't stop running commentary on the interaction while you're trying to have it. So, let's talk about where that feeling actually comes from. You know that feeling when you're in a group and everyone's laughing, connecting, vibing, but you feel like you're on the outside looking in? Not because they're excluding you. They're not. You're right there. But something feels off, right? It's like everyone else is speaking a language fluently while you're still translating in your head. They seem comfortable, relaxed, and you're just aware, too aware of everything. And here's the worst part. You start thinking it's your fault, that you're broken somehow, that everyone else figured out this social thing and you missed the memo. But hey, that's not what's happening here. And here's what makes it worse. The exhaustion hits after you leave. You replay the conversation. Did you talk too much or not enough? Did that joke land weird? Other people seem to just move on. But you're stuck analyzing every moment like you're reviewing game footage. And it's lonely because you can't exactly tell people, hey, I'm exhausted from thinking too hard about our casual hangout. It sounds dramatic. It sounds like overthinking. But it's not just overthinking, It's a different way your brain processes social interaction. And yeah, it makes connection harder. So why does this happen? What's actually going on in your brain during these interactions? Well, psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky studied something called the spotlight effect. It's this tendency we all have to think people are paying way more attention to us than they actually are. But here's the thing. If you're highly self-aware, you experience this on a completely different level. You're not just worried people are watching. You're watching yourself being watched. You're aware of your awareness. It's like having a camera crew in your head during every interaction, Most people experience the spotlight effect in specific moments, like after they spill coffee or say something awkward. But for you, it's constant. Every conversation comes with a running commentary you can't shut off. But it's not just about feeling watched, There's something else your brain is doing. Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize for his work, talks about 2 systems of thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, intuitive. System 2 is slow, deliberate, analytical. Most people use System 1 in casual social situations. They just respond. They don't think about it. But your brain keeps pulling you into System 2. You're analyzing word choice, noticing tone shifts, picking up on micro-expressions. It's like trying to have a relaxed conversation while simultaneously solving a puzzle. And that takes energy, a lot of it. Which is why a 20-minute chat can feel like you just took an exam. Dr. Matthias Mehl did research on conversation types. He found that people who have more substantive conversations, the kind that go beyond surface-level topics, report higher levels of well-being and satisfaction. But here's your problem. Small talk doesn't just bore you. It actively drains you, You're sitting there talking about the weather or weekend plans, and your brain is screaming, can we talk about something that actually matters? It's not snobbery, it's a genuine psychological need for meaningful exchange. And when most social interaction doesn't provide that, well, you walk away feeling empty instead of connected. Now, all of that awareness, it comes at a cost. Psychologist Mark Snyder identified something he called self-monitoring. It's basically how much you adjust your behavior based on social cues. High self-monitors are like social chameleons. They read the room and adapt constantly. If you're reading this, you're probably a high self-monitor, which sounds like a good thing, right? Being socially aware? Except it's exhausting. You're constantly calibrating, adjusting your energy, modifying your tone, deciding which version of yourself fits this particular situation. Low self-monitors just show up as themselves and don't think twice. But you're running a background program that never stops, and that program eats up your mental resources. There's another layer to this. Daniel Goleman popularized the concept of emotional intelligence. The ability to read and understand emotions, both yours and others. Sounds great. And it is, until you realize you're the only one in the room picking up on certain things. You notice when someone's faking enthusiasm, when there's tension under the surface, when someone says they're fine but clearly aren't, and you can't unsee it. You're carrying an awareness of the emotional dynamics that no one else seems to be tracking. It's isolating, because you can't exactly say, hey, did anyone else notice that weird energy? Most people didn't. They're just having a normal conversation while you're reading the subtext, and it doesn't stop there. Your brain is wired to see patterns. That's actually a marker of intelligence. You connect dots quickly. You see how things relate, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This creates distance. Because while everyone else is participating in the performance, you're watching it happen. You're not judging them for it, but you're also not able to fully buy in. And that keeps you on the outside, you know? So you're stuck with this impossible choice. There's this fundamental tension in your life. You want to belong. That's human. We all need connection. But belonging often seems to require performing, playing along, softening your edges. And that feels like betraying yourself, right? Psychologists Edward Dicey and Richard Ryan call this the tension between autonomy and relatedness. You need both. You need to be yourself and you need to feel connected to others. But what happens when those two needs conflict? When being yourself seems to push people away? Carl Jung talked about individuation, becoming who you really are. But he also acknowledged that humans are deeply social. We need the collective. So you're stuck trying to find a way to be genuine, while also not ending up completely alone. So what do? Well, most people start masking. Research on social masking shows that constantly adjusting your natural behavior to fit in has a real cost. It's called cognitive load. Your brain is managing two things at once: the interaction itself and the performance of being normal. You learn which topics are safe, which aspects of your personality to dial down, how much enthusiasm is acceptable. It becomes automatic after a while. But automatic doesn't mean effortless. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. Not from being social, from pretending to be a slightly different version of yourself for hours on end. And over time, something shifts. So you start holding back. Someone asks what you've been thinking about, and you give the light version, not the real answer. Because the real answer involves something you've been genuinely curious about, and past experience taught you that people got bored quickly. So you learn to self-edit, to keep things casual, to not go too deep too fast. And maybe that's socially intelligent. But hey, it also means you're constantly filtering yourself, never quite showing up fully. And over time, that creates this weird double loneliness. You're lonely when you're alone, but you're also lonely when you're with people, because they don't actually know you. They know the edited version, you know? But here's what you need to understand. This isn't a character flaw. It's actually about wiring. Hans Eysenck, one of the pioneers in personality research, found that introverts have higher baseline arousal in their nervous systems, which means they are overstimulated faster than the extroverts. It's not about being shy. It's about your nervous system hitting capacity. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people shows that about 20% of people process sensory and emotional information more deeply. Loud environments, bright lights, intense social energy, it all registers more intensely for you. So yeah, typical social environments feel overwhelming. Not because you're weak or antisocial, but because your nervous system is processing more input than others are experiencing. That's a wiring difference, not a character flaw. And it's not just about energy levels. There's a concept in organizational psychology called person-environment fit. Basically, not every environment works for every person. Some people thrive in fast-paced, high-energy settings. Others need quiet and structure. The same applies to social environments. If you are someone who processes things deeply, values intellectual exchange, and needs time to think, then loud bars and surface-level networking events are a terrible fit. It's not that you can't handle them, it's that they're not designed for how you operate, and that's okay. You don't need to force yourself into environments that drain you just because that's where everyone socializes, you know? There's one more piece to this. If you score high on openness to experience, one of the big 5 personality traits, you're probably someone who's driven by curiosity. You want to explore ideas, you get excited about learning, you think about things that most people don't think about. That's a gift, but it also means casual conversation often feels unstimulating. People are talking about surface topics, and you're interested in questions that don't have easy answers. You want to talk about why things are the way they are, not just what happened. The problem is, most casual social interaction isn't structured for that. So you end up feeling isolated even when you're surrounded by people. Because the conversation type you need is rare, you know? Okay, so if you're wired differently, that affects who you can actually connect with. Robin Dunbar's research on social circles shows that humans can maintain about 150 casual relationships, but only about 5 close ones. And to get to that inner circle requires serious time and compatibility. Now add in the fact that you need a specific type of person, someone who values depth, who won't be weirded out by your need for meaningful conversation, who can match your emotional and intellectual energy. The pool just got way smaller. You're not looking for just anyone. You're looking for specific compatibility. And yeah, that makes finding your people legitimately harder. It's not in your head. The math is working against you. But here's the good news. Research consistently shows that having a few close friends provides more psychological benefit than having tons of acquaintances. It's not about your social network size. It's about the quality of those connections. If you're someone who needs depth to feel truly connected, then yeah, you're going to have fewer friends. But the ones you do have, they will actually matter. They will be people who get you, who you don't have to perform for. That's not settling. That's being selective. And there's nothing wrong with that, you know? All right, enough about the problem. Let's talk about what actually works. Psychologist Elaine Aron did this famous study where he had strangers ask each other 36 increasingly personal questions. By the end, many felt surprisingly close to each other. Some even fell in love. The study showed that vulnerability, when it's reciprocated, creates intimacy fast. You can use this principle. When you meet someone who seems promising, don't stay stuck in small talk forever. Test the waters with something slightly more real. Share an actual thought. Ask a question that goes past surface level. If they reciprocate, great! You found someone who might be your kind of person. If they deflect back to small talk, also fine. You just saved yourself months of trying to build depth with someone who's not interested in it. And here's how you do that in practice. Share what you're actually interested in, not the socially acceptable version, the real thing. Yeah, it's risky, counterintuitive even. Some people won't get it. But that's the point. You're filtering for compatibility upfront instead of wasting energy. When you lead with authenticity, even in small doses, you signal to other depth-oriented people that you're safe to be real with, and they'll respond in kind. That's how you find your people, you know, by being yourself and seeing who sticks around. Now, one more thing about building these connections. Christine Miserandino developed something called spoon theory. The idea is that you only have so many spoons of energy per day. Every activity costs spoons, and once you're out, you're done. If socializing drains your spoons fast, you need to be strategic. Say no to events that will deplete you. Protect your energy for the connections that actually matter. Stop forcing yourself to show up to things that leave you feeling worse. This isn't antisocial, it's self-aware. You're managing a limited resource. And that's smart, not selfish. Before we wrap up, let's shift how you think about all of this. Scott Page, who studies cognitive diversity, found that groups with diverse thinking styles outperform homogeneous ones. Your different perspective, the one that makes you feel like an outsider, actually adds value. You see things others miss, right? You ask questions others don't think to ask. You bring depth to conversations that would otherwise stay shallow. That's not a flaw. That's a contribution. There's also a practical skill here. John Kabat-Zinn's work on mindfulness shows that you can learn to observe your thoughts without getting completely lost in them. That includes the social analysis your brain does automatically. You don't have to turn off your awareness. That's probably impossible anyway. But you can practice noticing when you're stuck in observer mode and gently redirect yourself back to the actual interaction. It takes practice. And it won't always work. But over time, you can find moments where you're present and aware without being consumed by the analysis. And finally, here's the most important part. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion shows that accepting yourself as you are, not as you think you should be, reduces anxiety and increases well-being. You're not going to become someone who thrives at loud parties. You're not going to stop needing meaningful conversation. And you're probably always going to process social interaction more deeply than most people. That's your social architecture. And fighting it just makes you miserable. What if you stopped trying to fix yourself and started building a social life that actually works for how you're wired? Look, here's what I want you to take away from all of this. You've been searching for belonging in spaces that weren't built for how you connect. And that's why it's been so hard. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you've been using the wrong map, you know? Your people are out there doing the same thing, looking for someone exactly like you. Someone who gets it, someone who makes them feel less alone in how they experience the world. So yeah, you're not out of place everywhere. You just haven't found your place yet, but it exists and it's worth the search.